Welcome to David's Stories. Today we follow Peter Richardson, a father betrayed by his daughter's cruelty after heart surgery who reclaims his home and dignity through legal action and emotional resolve. Subscribe and hit the bell for weekly videos uncovering family truths. Share your thoughts below. Let's start the story. The house was quiet, save for the faint hum of the television. In the living room, its laughter a mockery of the silence in my chest. I lay on the recliner, my body heavy, my breath shallow, each inhale tugging at the surgical tape, binding the wound over my heart. 5 days ago, I'd stared into the void on an operating table, my heart stopping twice, before the surgeons wrestled me back to life. Now in the home I'd built with sweat and sacrifice, I felt like a ghost haunting my own existence. Haley. I called, my voice weaker than I'd intended, frayed from the hospital's sterile air and the weight of recovery. Could you bring me a glass of water? The words hung in the air unanswered. I shifted, wincing, as the stitches pulled a sharp reminder of the fragility I couldn't shake. The kitchen was only steps away, but it might as well have been a mile. My daughter Haley stood in the doorway, her silhouette framed by the afternoon light streaming through the window. She didn't move. Her arms crossed, her posture sharp, deliberate, like a blade poised to strike. Seriously, Dad? Her voice was ice cutting through the warmth of the room. We're not your servants. The words landed like a blow, heavier than the pain in my chest, deeper than the surgeon's scalpel. I stared at her, searching for the girl who once ran to me with dandelions clutched in her small fists, her laughter brighter than the summer sun. That girl was gone. In her place stood a woman whose eyes held no warmth, only a cold calculation I didn't recognize. My daughter, my Haley, looked at me as if I were a stranger begging for scraps. I tried to sit up, gripping the armrests, the effort sending jolts of pain through my torso. I just had heart surgery, Haley. I'm asking for a glass of water. She didn't budge. Her wedding ring glinted as she gestured toward the kitchen. The sink's right there. You've got legs. Con, her husband, didn't even glance up from the couch. The television blared a game show, its artificial cheer filling the void, where his response should have been. His thumb flicked lazily over the remote, a king indifferent to the pleas of a peasant. I'd raised Haley, paid for her education, her wedding, their car when Con's business venture collapsed. I'd given them this house, my house bought with the blood and grief of my late wife Sarah. And now they couldn't spare me a glass of water. The air grew thick, heavy with something unspoken, something darker than mere ingratitude. I pushed myself to my feet, the surgical site screaming in protest. My vision blurred for a moment, the room tilting as if the house itself were rejecting me. I steadied myself against the armrest, refusing to collapse under their gaze. Easy, Dad. Haley said, her tone hollow, the kind of concern people feign to avoid looking heartless. Don't fall and make more work for us. More work. The words burned, searing through the memories of all I'd done for her. The fevers I'd soothed with cold cloths, the nightmares I'd chased away with whispered reassurances, the countless times I'd opened my wallet without question. Those moments felt like relics of another life, one where love was reciprocated, where family meant something. I took a step toward the kitchen, each movement a battle against my body's betrayal. Behind me, Haley sighed, the sound sharp and impatient, as if my existence were an inconvenience. Con muttered something under his breath, too low to catch, but the tone was unmistakable disdain, laced with a venom I hadn't noticed before. It's just a little heart procedure, he said louder now, his eyes still glued to the screen. Stop acting like you're dying. Little procedure. I'd flatlined twice. The surgeon's voice echoed in my mind, calm but grave. We almost lost you, Mr. Richardson. It's a miracle you're here. A miracle, apparently, that meant nothing to the two people who should have cared most. The kitchen felt like a distant shore, each step a negotiation with pain. I reached the counter, gripping its edge as if it were the only thing anchoring me to reality. The glass trembled in my hand as I filled it from the tap. The water was cold, but it tasted bitter, like the truth settling into my bones. I turned to face them. Haley's gaze was impatient, Khan's indifferent. They watched me not with concern but with something closer to disgust, as if I were an uninvited guest in the house I'd built. The house I'd paid for with Sarah's life insurance, her final gift to secure our family's future. The weight of that realization pressed against my chest, heavier than the surgical wound. "Do you know what this house means?" I asked. My voice low, steady despite the pain. Haley raised an eyebrow, her expression daring me to continue. Khan didn't even acknowledge the question. The silence between us was a chasm, and in that moment I saw them for who they'd become, not my family, but strangers wearing familiar faces. The house wasn't just wood and brick. It was a monument to Sarah's love, her sacrifice. 5 years ago, after her funeral, I'd sat in our bedroom staring at the insurance papers. $350,000 her legacy to keep us safe. I'd driven to the real estate office, hands shaking as I signed the deed transfer to Haley and Khan. A 3-bedroom home, a yard for future grandchildren, a sanctuary I'd imagined filled with laughter. Haley had cried that day, whispering, "Dad, this is too much. We can't accept this." But I'd insisted. "Family takes care of family," I'd said. "Your mother would want you to have security." Khan had shaken my hand, his grip firm, his promises earnest. "You'll always have a place here, Peter. We'll take care of you." Those words were smoke now curling away in the harsh light of their betrayal. Every sacrifice I'd made, $20,000 for Haley's wedding, $5,000 to save Khan's failing business, $8,000 for their kitchen remodel, had been met with gratitude once. But somewhere along the way, gratitude had hardened into expectation, expectation into entitlement. I sipped the water, the bitterness lingering. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, casting long shadows across the living room. There was something in those shadows, something I couldn't name, but felt a whisper of something ancient, watching, waiting. This house had seen my love, my grief, my sacrifices. It held secrets I hadn't yet uncovered, and in that moment I sensed it was more than a home. It was a witness to my pain, and perhaps a partner in my reckoning. I returned to the recliner, moving slowly, not just because of the pain, but because I needed time to think. The air felt different now, charged with an undercurrent of mystery. The house creaked, a sound I'd always dismissed as settling beams, but today, it felt like a message, a quiet urging to act. I glanced at the family photos on the mantel. Sarah smiling, Haley as a child, our life before it fractured. Those images seemed to watch me, their eyes holding secrets I hadn't noticed before. "Next thing you know, he'll want us to cook his meals," Haley muttered to Khan, her voice low, but not low enough. "Don't give him ideas," Khan replied, his chuckle dry, empty. They thought I couldn't hear, or perhaps they didn't care. Their words were a blade slicing through the last threads of my illusions. I set the glass down, my hand steady, despite the storm inside me. Something was shifting, not just in me, but in the house itself. The shadows seemed to deepen the air, growing heavier, as if the walls were listening, waiting for my next move. I'd given everything to Haley and Khan, but they'd repaid me with cruelty. And yet I wasn't powerless. Not yet. That night, I lay in bed, the darkness pressing against me. The bedroom, once a sanctuary where Sarah and I had dreamed of our future, now felt like a cell. The surgical wound throbbed, a constant reminder of my fragility, but my mind was alight with something new. Resolve, sharp and unyielding. I replayed Haley's words, Khan's indifference, the way they'd looked at me like a burden. But beneath that pain, something else stirred, something I couldn't explain. I rose, ignoring the pain, and moved to the window. The moonlight spilled across the yard, illuminating the flower bed below. It was the same yard where Haley had played as a child, where Sarah had planted roses that still bloomed each spring. But tonight the yard felt different, alive with a strange energy. I pressed my hand against the glass, and for a moment I swore it pulsed under my touch, warm like a heartbeat. The house was speaking to me, or perhaps I was finally listening. There was power here in these walls, in the legacy Sarah had left behind. I thought of the insurance papers locked away in the study and the lawyer's card in my wallet. Michael O'Connor, a man who'd handled the deed transfer with a foresight I hadn't appreciated until now. There were secrets in this house, legal and otherwise, and I was beginning to sense they held the key to my salvation. The next morning the house felt different, as if it had shifted in the night. The creaks were louder, the shadows sharper. I sat at the kitchen table sipping coffee when Haley walked in, her eyes avoiding mine. Con followed, his phone in hand, already distracted. They moved through the space as if they owned it, as if I were a guest in their domain. But the house knew better. I could feel it in the air, in the way the floorboards seemed to hum under my feet. "Haley," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I need to talk to you both." She paused, her hand on the coffee pot, her expression wary. "What now, Dad?" Con glanced up, his brow furrowing. "If this is about the water thing, let's not make a big deal out of it." "It's not about the water," I said, though. It was, in a way. It was about everything, their entitlement, their betrayal, the way they'd turned Sarah's gift into a weapon against me. "It's about this house." Haley's eyes narrowed, a flicker of unease crossing her face. "What about the house?" I leaned forward, my hands steady on the table. "Do you know why this house matters? Do you know what it cost?" She shrugged, but there was a tension in her shoulders, a crack in her confidence. Con set his phone down, his attention finally on me. The room grew still, the air thick with anticipation. The house was watching, waiting, and I felt its strength coursing through me. "This house," I said, my voice low, "was bought with your mother's life. Her insurance money, her sacrifice to keep us together. And you've turned it into a place where I'm not even worth a glass of water." Haley's face paled, but she said nothing. Con shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting to the door. The silence stretched heavy with the weight of truth. I stood, ignoring the pain in my chest, and walked to the study. The door creaked as I opened it, revealing the filing cabinet where I kept the insurance papers, the deed, and Michael's card. As I reached for them, the room seemed to hum a low vibration that felt like approval. There was power here, not just in the documents, but in me. I wasn't the frail old man they thought I was. I was Peter Richardson, the man who'd built this life, who'd survived death twice, who'd given everything for his family. And I was done being invisible. As I held Michael's card, a memory surfaced unbidden. The day I'd signed the deed transfer, he'd looked at me with a strange intensity. "This house has a history, Peter," he'd said. "Make sure it's respected." At the time I'd thought he meant the legalities, the paperwork. Now I wondered if he'd meant something more. There were stories in this town about old houses, whispers of spirits tied to the land of homes that held grudges. I'd dismissed them as folklore, but standing in the study I felt it, a presence, subtle but undeniable, urging me to act. I called Michael, my voice steady despite the pain. "I need to see you. It's urgent." "Of course, Peter," he said, his tone professional but warm. "Given your surgery, I can be there by noon." As I hung up, I glanced at the family photo on the desk. Sarah, Haley. Me smiling under a summer sky. The frame was dusty, neglected, but the glass seemed to shimmer, catching the light in a way that felt almost alive. I touched it, and for a moment I swore I heard Sarah's voice, soft but clear. "Take it back, Peter. Take it all back." The house creaked again, louder this time, and I knew I wasn't alone. Not in my fight, not in my pain, not in my resolve. The shadows were on my side, and they were ready to move. The study smelled of old paper and dust, a sanctuary of memories and secrets. I sat at the oak desk, Michael O'Connor's business card in my hand, its edges worn from years, in my wallet. The house was quiet now, Haley and Con having retreated to their morning routines, her in the kitchen, him lost in his phone. But the silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy-charged, like the air before a storm. The floorboards creaked softly, as if the house itself were urging me to act, to uncover the power I'd buried under years of sacrifice. I traced the embossed letters of Michael's name, my mind replaying the past. 5 years ago, when I'd signed the deed transfer, he'd spoken of the house's history with an odd weight, his eyes lingering on me as if he knew something I didn't. At the time, I'd been too consumed by grief for Sarah, too eager to secure Haley's future, to question it. Now his words echoed like a warning. Make sure it's respected. Respected. Haley and Con had done anything but. They'd turned Sarah's gift into a prison, her sacrifice into a weapon. My chest tightened, not from the surgical wound but from the clarity of their betrayal. I dialed Michael's number. My fingers steadied despite the ache in my body. The phone rang twice before his voice came through, calm and professional. "Peter, good to hear from you. Everything all right?" "No," I said, my voice low but firm. "I need to see you today. It's about the house." A pause, then. "Given your surgery, I can clear my schedule. Noon at your place." "Yes, and Michael, bring the deed paperwork." "Understood." His tone shifted, a hint of curiosity beneath the professionalism. "I'll be there." I hung up, the click of the phone echoing in the study. The air seemed to hum, a faint vibration I felt more than heard. I glanced at the family photo on the desk. Sarah's smile, Haley's tiny hand in mine. A moment frozen before everything changed. The glass shimmered, catching the light in a way that felt alive, almost expectant. I touched it, and for a fleeting moment I swore I felt warmth, as if Sarah's presence lingered, urging me forward. The house creaked again, louder now, a sound that seemed to come from within the walls. I stood, ignoring the sharp tug of my stitches, and moved to the filing cabinet. Inside were the insurance papers, the deed, and a leather-bound journal Sarah had kept in her final months. I hadn't opened it since her death, too raw to face her words. But now something compelled me to reach for it. The cover was soft, worn, her handwriting etched into the first page. "For Peter and Haley, my heart, my home." I opened it, my breath catching. Her entries were brief, practical notes about the insurance policy, her hopes for Haley's future, her love for this house. But one passage stood out, written in a shakier hand, dated weeks before she passed. "This house is more than walls. It holds us, protects us. If it's ever misused, it will know, and it will act." I froze, my pulse quickening. The words felt like a message not just from Sarah, but from something deeper, something tied to this place. The house creaked again, a low groan that seemed to answer her words. I closed the journal, my mind racing. Was it grief playing tricks, or was there truth in the whispers of this town, stories of homes that held grudges, that guarded their own? I didn't know. But I felt it. The house was on my side. Haley's voice broke the silence, sharp and impatient, from the kitchen. "Dad, are you still in there? Breakfast is ready if you want it." Her tone carried no warmth, only obligation. I slipped the journal into my pocket and stepped into the hallway. The light was different today, dimmer, as if the house were holding its breath. Haley stood at the counter, pouring coffee, her movements mechanical. Con sat at the table, scrolling through his phone, his indifference a wall between us. "I'm fine," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "I need to ask you something." Haley glanced up, her eyes narrowing. "What now?" I took a breath, steadying myself. "Yesterday, when I asked for water, you said you weren't my servant. Do you remember what this house means to me? To your mother?" She stiffened her hand, pausing on the coffee pot. "It's our home, Dad. We live here. What's your point?" "My point," I said, my voice low but edged with steel, "is that this house was a gift. From me. From your mother's sacrifice. And you treat me like I'm a burden in it." Con looked up, his brow furrowing. "Don't start this again. You're recovering. You're emotional. Let's not make a big deal out of nothing." "Nothing." I stepped closer, the floorboards humming beneath me. "I gave you this house. I paid for your wedding, your car, your debts. And you can't even bring me a glass of water after I nearly died." Haley's face tightened, a flicker of guilt quickly masked by defiance. "We're not your maids, Dad. You're not helpless. The doctor said light activity is good for you. The lie stung, but it was the house's response that caught my attention. A faint tremor, a vibration in the air as if the walls themselves bristled at her words. I glanced at the family photo on the mantel, Sarah's eyes seeming to watch us. For a moment I swore the frame tilted just slightly as if nudged by an unseen hand. I see, I said, my voice calm but cold. I'll remember that. I turned back to the study, my heart pounding not from pain, but from a fire I hadn't felt in years. The house was speaking, and I was listening. It wasn't just about the deed or the law. There was something more here, something waiting to be unleashed. I closed the study door behind me, the click echoing like a promise. Michael arrived at noon. His gray suit and leather briefcase, a stark contrast to the chaos brewing within these walls. He settled into the armchair across from me, his eyes scanning the room as if sensing its weight. "You look like you've been through hell, Peter," he said, his voice gentle but direct. "Tell me what's going on." I recounted everything. The water Haley's words, Khan's indifference, the way they'd turned my home into a place where I felt like an intruder. I told him about the house, the insurance money, Sarah's sacrifice. And I told him about the journal, her cryptic warning about the house knowing if it was misused. Michael's eyebrows lifted slightly, but he didn't dismiss it. Instead, he leaned forward, his expression serious. "Let's start with the legal side," he said, opening his briefcase. "The deed transfer to Haley and Khan 5 years ago, it wasn't a full transfer. I included reversionary clauses standard for family gifts. If they fail to provide agreed-upon care or respect, the house reverts to you." My heart skipped, not from surgery, but from hope. "What does that mean exactly?" He pulled out the deed, pointing to a paragraph, dense with legal jargon. "It means you still own this house, Peter. The transfer was conditional. If they've breached those conditions, say by neglecting you during recovery or treating you with hostility, you can reclaim it. Legally, it's yours." The words hit like a lifeline thrown into a stormy sea. I leaned back, the recliner creaking, the house seeming to echo its approval with a soft groan. "How quickly can we act? With evidence of their behavior, we can file a notice of revocation. They'd have 30 days to vacate." Michael's voice was steady, but his eyes held a glint of something else, understanding perhaps of the deeper stakes. "But we need documentation. Witness statements, proof of their actions." I nodded, my mind already racing. The house creaked again, louder, as if urging me to move forward. I thought of Haley's cold dismissal, Khan's mocking chuckle, the way they'd looked at me like I was nothing. That was evidence enough, but I needed more, something undeniable. "Peter," Michael said, his tone shifting, "when we did the transfer, you asked me to ensure the house was protected. I did. But there's something else. This house, it's old. Older than the records suggest. There are stories in town about it, holding on to its owners, resisting those who disrespect it." I stared at him, my pulse quickening. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying be careful. The law is on your side, but this house, it has a reputation. People talk about strange things, doors locking on their own, shadows moving. I don't believe in ghosts, but I believe in intent. You intend to fight for this place. Make sure you're ready for what that might mean." His words sent a chill through me, but not of fear. It was confirmation. The house wasn't just a structure. It was a partner, a guardian of Sarah's legacy. I stood, ignoring the pain in my chest. "I'm ready. Let's start gathering what we need." That afternoon I decided to test them. If I was going to build a case, I needed proof not just of their cruelty, but of their intent. The house seemed to agree, its shadows lengthening as the sun dipped lower. I waited until Haley and Khan were in the living room, her sorting through shopping bags, him sprawled on the couch. The television blared, but the air felt tense, as if the house were holding its breath. "Haley," I said, standing in the doorway, my voice calm but deliberate. "Could you grab me a glass of water? I'm still recovering, and it'd mean a lot." She froze her hands, pausing on a designer scarf. Her eyes flicked to Khan, then back to me, annoyance flashing across her face. "Dad, you're standing right there. The kitchen's 10 feet away." The floorboards creaked a low groan that seemed to vibrate through my bones. I pressed on my voice steady. "I'm asking for help. From my daughter. After heart surgery." Khan snorted, not looking up from his phone. "You walked in here just fine. Stop milking it." The air thickened the shadows in the corners of the room, seeming to pulse. I felt it, a surge of energy, like the house was watching, judging. "I see," I said, my tone cold. "So helping your father is too much trouble." Haley rolled her eyes, tossing the scarf onto the couch. "We're not your personal staff, Dad. You're not an invalid." There it was, again that phrase. Not your servants, not your staff. The house groaned louder, a sound that made Haley glance at the ceiling, her brow furrowing. Khan didn't notice, but I did. The shadows moved just slightly, like ripples in a pond. I turned to the kitchen, each step deliberate, my hand brushing the wall. It was warm, alive, as if it were whispering, "Keep going. They'll learn." I filled a glass, the water tasting less bitter, now tinged with something else, resolve perhaps, or the house's silent approval. When I returned to the living room, Haley and Khan were whispering, their voices low but sharp. "He's getting worse," Haley muttered. "Thinks he can guilt us into waiting on him." "Let him try," Khan replied, his tone smug. "This is our house now." The words were a spark in dry grass. The house trembled, a faint vibration that rattled the glass in my hand. I set it down, my mind racing. They thought they owned this place, but they were wrong. The house belonged to me, to Sarah, to the love and sacrifice that built it. And it was ready to fight back. I spent the evening in the study, poring over Sarah's journal. Her words were a lifeline, each entry a reminder of the life we'd built. But the cryptic passage about the house, knowing, haunted me. I flipped to the back, where she'd scribbled a note in hurried script. "The oak tree in the yard, its roots run deep. They hold the heart of this place. Trust it." The oak tree. I'd always thought it was just a tree, its gnarled branches shading the yard where Haley once played. But Sarah's words suggested more. I stepped to the window, peering out at the tree's silhouette against the twilight. Its branches swayed though there was no wind, and for a moment I swore I saw a flicker of light at its base, like a pulse in the earth. I closed the journal, my resolve hardening. The house, the tree, Sarah's legacy, they were all connected, and they were on my side. I called Michael again, my voice steady. "I have evidence. Their words, their actions. I want to move forward." "Good," he said. "Document everything. Times, dates, exact words. If you can get a witness, even better. I'll start drafting the notice." I hung up, the house creaking in approval. I thought of the neighbor, Joshua Palmer, who'd waved to me yesterday as he tended his garden. He'd seen me at the window, weak but determined. He could be my witness, my ally. The house seemed to agree, its shadows softening, as if offering a moment of calm before the storm. The next morning I tested them again, this time with purpose. I waited until Haley was in the kitchen chopping vegetables with a rhythm that spoke of routine, not care. Khan was in the garage tinkering with his car. The house was quiet, but its energy was palpable, a low hum that seemed to follow me. "Haley," I called, standing at the kitchen doorway. "I'm feeling dizzy. Could you help me with a glass of water?" She didn't stop chopping her knife, slicing through carrots with a steady thwack. "Dad, you're fine. You walked in here. Get it yourself." The house groaned louder than before, a sound that made Haley pause, her knife hovering. "What was that?" she muttered, glancing around. "Just the house settling," I said, but my eyes were on the shadows which seemed to coil in the corners. "I'm asking for help, Haley. From my daughter." She set the knife down, her expression hardening. "You're not helpless. Stop acting like it." Khan appeared in the doorway, wiping grease from his hands. "What's he whining about now?" The floorboards vibrated, a low rumble that made Khan glance down, his brow furrowing. I pressed on, my voice calm but unyielding. "I'm asking for consideration. For family. After everything I've done for you." Haley laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "Everything you've done? You gave us this house, sure, but we've been taking care of you. feeding you, letting you stay here. What more do you want? The house answered before I could. A sharp crack like wood splitting echoing from the ceiling. Haley flinched, her eyes darting upward. Khan stepped closer, his posture defensive. What the hell was that? I didn't answer. I walked to the sink, filled my glass, and drank the water cold and sharp. The house was awake, its energy pulsing through me. I felt stronger, not just in resolve, but in something deeper, something tied to this place. Haley and Khan watched me, their confidence cracking, their eyes flickering with unease. That afternoon I slipped out to the yard, drawn to the oak tree. Its branches loomed over the flower bed, its roots sprawling beneath the soil. I knelt, ignoring the pain in my chest, and pressed my hand to the earth. It was warm, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. Sarah's words echoed, "Trust it." I closed my eyes, and for a moment I felt her, Sarah, her love, her strength woven into the roots of this place. The house creaked behind me, a low approving hum. I stood, my resolve unshakable. Haley and Khan thought they could dismiss me, control me, but they were wrong. The house was mine, and it was ready to fight with me. I returned inside, Michael's card in my pocket, Sarah's journal under my arm. The shadows followed me, curling around my feet like loyal companions. I was no longer the frail old man they'd mocked. I was Peter Richardson, guardian of Sarah's legacy, and I was ready to take back what was mine. The air in the house was thick, electric, as if a storm were brewing within its walls. I stood in the living room, Michael's words echoing in my mind. The house is yours, Peter. Legally, it's yours. The deed's reversionary clauses were my shield, but the house itself felt like my sword, its shadows coiling around me like allies ready for battle. The oak tree's pulse still lingered in my fingertips. Sarah's journal, a weight in my pocket, her words. It will know. It will act, burning in my chest. I wasn't just fighting for my home. I was fighting for her, for the love we'd poured into this place, for the legacy Haley and Khan had defiled. They were in the kitchen, Haley unloading groceries with a clatter, Khan tapping at his phone, oblivious to the shift in the air. The house knew. Its floorboards creaked, a low growl that made Haley glance up, her brow furrowing. She didn't understand yet, but she would. I took a breath, steadying myself against the pain in my chest, the surgical wound a constant reminder of my fragility but also my survival. Haley, Khan, I said, my voice cutting through the hum of their routine. We need to talk. Now! Haley set a jar of pasta sauce on the counter, her movements slow, wary. What is it, Dad? Another lecture about water? Khan snorted, not looking up. Let's not do this again. The house answered before I could, a sharp crack from the ceiling like wood splitting under pressure. Haley flinched, her eyes darting upward. Khan's phone slipped slightly in his hand, his smirk fading. I stepped forward, the shadows in the room seeming to stretch toward me, their edges sharp, expectant. This isn't about water, I said, my voice steady, infused with the strength I hadn't felt in years. This is about this house, my house, the one I gave you as a gift, bought with your mother's life insurance, the one you've turned into a place where I'm treated like a stranger. Haley's face tightened, a flicker of unease crossing her features. What are you talking about? This is our home. No, I said, my words sharp, final. It's mine. Legally, morally, in every way that matters. I spoke to my lawyer today. The deed transfer had conditions: care, respect, family. You've broken every one. You have 72 hours to pack your things and leave. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by a low hum from the walls, as if the house itself were affirming my words. Haley's mouth opened, then closed, her eyes wide with shock. Khan stood abruptly, his phone clattering to the table, his posture shifting from indifference to aggression. You're kidding, right? He said, his voice low, dangerous. This is our house. You can't just kick us out. I'm not kidding, I replied, my gaze unwavering. The deed reverts to me if you fail to honor its conditions, neglecting me after surgery, dismissing me, treating me like a burden. That's a breach. You have 72 hours. Haley's face flushed a mix of anger and panic. "You can't do this. We live here. We have rights." "You have no rights," I said, my voice cold, backed by the house's silent strength. "I spoke to Michael O'Connor this morning. The clauses are clear. This house is mine and you've lost your claim to it." Khan stepped closer, his fists clenched. "You're bluffing. You're just mad about yesterday trying to scare us." The house groaned a deep guttural sound that made the windows rattle. Haley grabbed Khan's arm, her eyes darting around the room. "What was that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I didn't answer. The shadows in the corners pulsed, their edges sharper, as if ready to move. I felt it, the house's energy, its anger mirroring my own. "I'm serious," I said. "You've made it clear you don't want me here. So I'm taking my home back." 72 hours. Khan laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "Where do you think we're going to go? You think we can just pack up and leave in 3 days? Do you know what rent costs?" "That's not my concern anymore," I said, my voice steady, despite the pain in my chest. "You made your choice when you decided caring for your father was too much trouble." Haley stepped between us, her eyes blazing. "Dad, please, we can work this out." We were stressed. "Okay. We didn't mean it." "It's too late," I said, turning toward the hallway. The shadows followed, curling around my feet like a protective cloak. I was halfway to my bedroom when Khan's voice stopped me. "You're not going anywhere," he said, his tone sharp, threatening. He moved to block the doorway, his frame filling the space. "We're not done talking." The air grew heavier, the house's hum turning into a low growl. I turned to face him, my heart pounding not from fear, but from the fire burning inside me. "Give me space, Khan." "No," he said, stepping closer. "You're going to sit down and stop this nonsense." Before I could respond, Haley grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in. "Dad, you're not thinking clearly. The surgery, the meds, it's messing with you. Let's talk this through." Her touch wasn't gentle, it was controlling, a grip meant to steer me. The house reacted, a sharp crack from the ceiling, louder than before, followed by a flicker of the lights. Haley gasped, releasing me, her eyes wide with fear. Khan's bravado faltered, his gaze darting to the ceiling. "I'm perfectly clear," I said, stepping around them. "I'm going to my room to call my lawyer." Khan moved faster than I expected, his hand darting into my pocket and snatching my phone before I could react. "You're not calling anyone," he said, his voice low, menacing. "You're going to calm down and stop this." My heart rate spiked, the surgical wound throbbing with each beat. The house groaned again, a sound so deep it seemed to come from the earth itself. The shadows in the hallway darkened, their edges coiling like tendrils. "Give me my phone," I said, my voice steady despite the pain. "When you start making sense," Khan replied, slipping the phone into his pocket. Haley moved to my other side, her hand on my arm again, guiding me toward my bedroom. Their movements were coordinated, practiced, as if they'd planned this. "This is insane," I said, trying to pull free, but my strength was no match for theirs. The surgery had left me weak, my body betraying me even as my resolve burned bright. "The only insane thing," Haley said, her voice sharp, "is you thinking you can threaten us in our own home." The house roared, a deep, bone-rattling sound that made the walls tremble. Haley froze, her grip loosening. Khan's eyes widened, his hand hovering over my phone. "What the hell is going on?" he muttered. They pushed me into my bedroom, the door slamming shut behind me. The lock clicked, a sound that echoed like a gunshot. I tested the handle, locked, unyielding. The window was my only option, but it led to a 15-foot drop onto the flower bed below. With my surgery climbing out was a risk that could tear my stitches and my recovery. Maybe my life. But staying trapped was worse. I pressed my hand against the door, feeling the warmth of the wood, the faint pulse that seemed to run through it. "You're with me," I whispered, not knowing if I was speaking to Sarah, the house, or both. The shadows in the room thickened, their edges sharp, almost tangible. I moved to the window, pushing it open. The evening air was cool, the oak tree's branches swaying in the twilight, its roots pulsing faintly in the earth below. Joshua Palmer was in his backyard coiling a garden hose, his silhouette a familiar comfort in the chaos. I'd known him for 3 years, a quiet man who always waved at the mailbox, who'd once helped me fix a fence post after a storm. "Joshua." I called, my voice low but urgent. "I need help." His head snapped up, his eyes finding mine in the window. "Peter." "What's wrong?" "They've locked me in," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Haley and Con. They took my phone. I need you to call the police." Joshua dropped the hose, his face shifting from confusion to alarm. "Are you hurt? Do you need an ambulance?" "No ambulance. Just police. I'm recovering from heart surgery and they're using it to control me." He nodded, pulling out his phone. "Hold on, Peter, I'm calling now." Relief flooded me as he dialed the dispatcher's voice, faint but clear through his speaker. 911. "What's your emergency? I need police at 4715 Maple Street." Joshua said, glancing at me for confirmation. "It's a family dispute. My neighbor Peter Richardson says his daughter and her husband have locked him in his room and taken his phone. He's recovering from heart surgery." The dispatcher asked questions. "Am I in danger? How long has this been going on?" I answered through the window, my voice calm but firm. "Tell them it's about a property dispute. They're trying to stop me from exercising my rights as the homeowner." Joshua relayed the information, his tone steady. "Officers are on the way," the dispatcher said. 8 to 10 minutes. "Thank you, Joshua," I called down. "Stay out there, please." "Don't worry," he said, his voice resolute. "I'm not going anywhere." Inside, I heard footsteps. Haley's light but hurried, moving down the hallway. The lock clicked, and the door swung open. She stood there, her face a mask of concern so perfect it could have fooled anyone. "Dad, are you okay? You seem agitated." The house groaned, a low, menacing sound that made her flinch. I stepped past her into the hallway, my heart pounding. "The police are coming," I said, my voice cold. Police Con emerged from the living room, his expression a mix of confusion and calculation. "Why would police be here?" Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. Haley moved quickly, her hand on my arm, guiding me toward the front door with a gentleness that was all performance. "I'll get it," she said, her voice dripping with worry. 2 officers stood on the porch, a man and a woman both in their 30s, their faces professional but wary. "Good evening," the man said. "I'm Officer Edwards. This is Officer Chloe. We received a call about a family dispute." "There's no dispute," Haley said, her voice smooth, convincing. "My father just had heart surgery. We're taking care of him, but he's been a bit confused." I stepped forward, shaking off her grip. "Officers," I called through my neighbor. "My daughter and her husband locked me in my bedroom and took my phone to stop me from reclaiming my house." Officer Chloe's eyes flicked between us, noting Haley's gentle touch, Con's concerned frown. "Sir, can you tell us what happened?" "They locked me in my room," I said, my voice clear, deliberate. "When I told them they needed to leave my house, they took my phone and forced me inside." Haley gasped, her hand flying to her chest. "Dad, that's not true. You were dizzy, confused. We helped you to your room to rest. The door wasn't locked, you just struggled with the handle." The house creaked, a sharp, angry sound that made Officer Edwards glance at the ceiling. I pressed on. "The door was locked. I'm not confused. I had surgery 5 days ago, but I know what happened." Con stepped closer, his voice soft, sympathetic. "Mr. Richardson's been struggling since the surgery. The anesthesia can mess with elderly patients. We're just trying to help." Officer Edwards pulled out a notebook. "When was the surgery, sir?" "Monday," I said. "But I'm not delusional. They locked me in because I told them to leave my house." Haley's eyes filled with tears, a performance that would have won awards. "Dad's been saying strange things all day. He thinks this is his house, that we're trying to take it from him. We're just trying to keep him safe." The house groaned again, louder, the lights flickering briefly. Officer Chloe looked around, her brow furrowing. "Mr. Richardson, do you feel safe here? Not when they lock me in rooms and take my phone?" I said, my voice rising with frustration. "We didn't take your phone," Haley said, pulling it from her pocket. "You left it on the counter. We were charging it." She handed it to Officer Edwards, who examined it briefly before returning it to me. "Sir, are you on any pain medications?" Officer Edwards asked. "Some," I said, "but they don't affect my mind. I know what they did." Haley shook her head, her voice soft, sad. "He's been confused, officers. He keeps insisting this is his house, but we live here. We take care of him." The house roared a deep guttural sound that shook the floor. The officers exchanged a glance, their hands inching toward their radios. "What was that, officer?" Chloe asked, her voice sharp. "Just the house settling," Haley said quickly, but her eyes betrayed her fear. Khan's face was pale, his earlier confidence gone. The officers stayed for 10 more minutes, asking questions, taking out notes. But I could see it in their eyes. The narrative Haley and Khan had spun was winning. An elderly man fresh from surgery, possibly confused by medication, making wild accusations against his caring family. The living room looked normal, no signs of struggle, no evidence of the confrontation that had happened an hour ago. Folks, Officer Edwards said, his tone diplomatic, "This seems like a misunderstanding related to post-surgical recovery. Mr. Richardson, if you feel unsafe, call us. But right now we don't see evidence of a crime." The house groaned again, a sound so deep it seemed to come from the earth itself. The officers didn't react, but I felt it, a warning, a promise. They left their patrol car, pulling away as the house fell into an ominous silence. Haley and Khan stood by the door, their expressions shifting from feigned concern to cold calculation. "That was stupid," Khan said, his voice low, threatening. "You think you can scare us with police?" The shadows in the room darkened their edges, sharp, almost alive. I clutched my phone, my heart pounding, but the house's energy steadied me. "You made a mistake," I said, my voice calm but edged with steel. "This isn't over." Haley grabbed my arm, her grip tight. "You're going back to your room. You need to calm down." They steered me down the hallway, the house groaning with each step. The bedroom door slammed shut, the lock clicking again. This time they took my phone, my wallet, everything. Khan pocketed them with a smirk as if he'd won. "We'll talk tomorrow," Haley said, her voice cold. "When you're thinking straight." The door closed, the lock turning with finality. I tested the handle, unyielding. The window loomed, a 15-foot drop to the flower bed below, the oak tree's branches swaying in the darkness. I pressed my hand against the wall, feeling its warmth, its pulse. "I'm not done," I whispered to the house, to Sarah, to myself. The shadows moved, curling around me like a promise. The house was awake, and it was angry. I paced the room, my mind racing, despite the pain in my chest. The house's groans were constant now, a low hum that seemed to vibrate through my bones. I moved to the window, pushing it open wider. The oak tree's branches swayed, its roots pulsing faintly in the moonlight, a beacon in the darkness. Joshua was still outside, his silhouette visible as he watered his plants, oblivious to the drama unfolding next door. "Joshua," I called, my voice low but urgent. He looked up, his face etched with concern. "Peter, you okay? I saw the police leave. They didn't believe me," I said, my voice steady despite the frustration. "They locked me in again. I need you to call Michael O'Connor, my lawyer. Tell him what's happening." Joshua nodded, pulling out his phone. "Give me the number." I recited it, my memory sharp despite the chaos. The house creaked, a sound of encouragement, as if urging me to keep fighting. Joshua dialed, his voice calm but firm as he spoke to Michael's voicemail. "Mr. O'Connor, this is Joshua Palmer, Peter Richardson's neighbor. He's locked in his room by his daughter and her husband. He says it's a property dispute. He needs your help. Call me back." "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with gratitude. "Stay close, Joshua. I might need you again." "I'm here," he said, his tone resolute. "I'll keep an eye out." The house hummed, its energy surging through me. I turned from the window, the shadows in the room thicker now, their edges almost tangible. I pressed my hand against the wall, feeling its warmth, its pulse. "We're not done," I whispered, and the house answered with a low, approving groan. Hours passed, the darkness deepening. The house's sounds grew louder, more insistent. Creaks, groans, a faint tapping from the walls, like fingers drumming in anticipation. I sat on the bed, Sarah's journal open in my lap, her words, a lifeline. "The house will know. It will act." I traced her handwriting, my fingers trembling not from fear but from a growing certainty. The house wasn't just a witness. It was a partner, its energy tied to Sarah's love, to my resolve. I heard footsteps in the hallway, Haley's voice muffled but sharp. "He'll calm down by morning. He's just confused." Khan's reply was low, smug. "Let him stew. He's got nowhere to go." The house roared, a deep guttural sound that shook the room. The shadows surged, coiling around the door, their edges sharp, almost cutting. I stood, my heart pounding, the surgical wound throbbing, but my resolve unshaken. They thought they'd won, but they were wrong. The house was with me, and it was ready to fight. I moved to the window, the oak tree's branches swaying, its roots pulsing brighter now, a faint glow in the earth. I didn't know what it meant, but I felt it. Sarah's presence, the house's power, my own strength. I wasn't trapped. Not anymore. The shadows curled around me, their touch cold but comforting, like a promise of what was to come. The darkness in my bedroom was alive, the shadows curling like smoke, their edges sharp and restless. The house groaned, a deep resonant sound that vibrated through the floorboards as if it were urging me to act. My phone was gone, my wallet confiscated, but I wasn't powerless. Not anymore. Sarah's journal lay open on the bed, her words a beacon in the gloom. "The house will know. It will act." I pressed my hand against the wall, feeling its warmth, its pulse, a heartbeat that matched my own. The house was with me, and it was angry. The window loomed before me, a 15-foot drop to the flower bed below the oak tree's branches, swaying in the moonlight. Its roots pulsed faintly, a soft glow in the earth as if beckoning me. Climbing out was madness. My heart surgery was only 5 days past the stitches in my chest, a fragile barrier between life and ruin. But staying locked in this room, a prisoner in my own home, was a worse fate. The house creaked, a low, encouraging hum, and I knew I had no choice. The shadows coiled around my feet, their touch cold but steady, like a promise of protection. I pushed the window open wider, the cool night air rushing in, carrying the scent of roses Sarah had planted years ago. Joshua Palmer was still outside, his silhouette, moving in his backyard, a quiet sentinel in the chaos. I'd asked him to call Michael O'Connor, my lawyer, and I trusted he'd done it. But I couldn't wait for rescue. The house was urging me to move, its energy surging through me, drowning out the pain in my chest. I sat on the windowsill, my legs dangling over the edge, the flower bed below a soft promise against the hard reality of the drop. My body protested, the surgical wound throbbing with each movement, but the fire in my chest burned hotter than any pain. I wasn't the frail old man Haley and Khan thought I was. I was Peter Richardson, the man who'd built this life, who'd survived death twice, who'd given everything for his family. And I was done being caged. The oak tree's branches swayed, through the air was still, their shadows dancing across the yard like a guide. I gripped the window frame, my breath shallow, and pushed off. The fall was brief but brutal, the impact jarring every bone in my body. Pain exploded through my chest, a white-hot spike that stole my breath. I lay in the flower bed, motionless, waiting for the world to stop spinning, for the stitches to hold. The earth was soft beneath me, warm, pulsing faintly as if the oak's roots were cradling me. I touched the soil, and it hummed a low vibration that steadied my racing heart. I was alive. The house creaked above me, a sound of approval, and the shadows in the yard seemed to shift, guiding me toward the front of the house. I stood, brushing dirt from my clothes, my movements slow but deliberate. Each step sent jolts of pain through my chest, but the house's energy pushed me forward, its pulse, a rhythm I followed. I moved carefully, avoiding the gravel path and the motion sensor by the garage. The familiar landscape of my property had become a battlefield, every corner hiding potential traps. At the front door I crouched, my fingers trembling as I lifted the doormat. The spare key was there exactly where I'd left it 3 years ago, a precaution I'd almost forgotten. The house hummed, its shadows curling around me as if shielding me from prying eyes. I inserted the key, the lock turning silently, a testament to the maintenance I'd done myself. The door opened, and I stepped inside, the air different now, not a prison, but a sanctuary reclaiming its master. Voices drifted from the living room, Haley and Cohn's laughter, a stark contrast to the tension coiled in my chest. They were discussing weekend plans, oblivious to my escape, confident they'd neutralized me. The irony was almost laughable. The house creaked softly, as if amused, its shadows guiding me toward the study. I avoided the creaky floorboards, moving like a thief in my own home. My goal clear, the filing cabinet held the deed, Michael's contact information, and Sarah's journal, my weapons in this war. The study door was ajar, the room dim but alive with energy. The shadows here were thicker, their edges almost tangible, curling around the filing cabinet like guardians. I opened it, my hands steady despite the pain, and retrieved the documents, the deed, the insurance papers, Michael's card, and my notes from our meeting. The house hummed a low, approving sound as I tucked them into my jacket. The oak tree's glow was visible through the window, its pulse stronger now, as if the house and the tree were one, their energy intertwined with my resolve. I slipped Sarah's journal into my pocket, its weight a reminder of her love, her warning. The oak's roots run deep. Trust it. I didn't understand it fully, but I felt it, the house's power. Sarah's presence, my own strength. I was no longer outmaneuvered. The game had changed, and I was rewriting the rules. I returned to my bedroom, moving silently, the shadows cloaking my steps. The house was quiet now, its groans subdued, as if conserving energy for what was to come. I climbed back through the window, the effort tearing at my stitches, but the pain was secondary to the fire in my chest. I lay in the flower bed, catching my breath, the oak tree's roots pulsing beneath me. The house was with me, and I was ready. The next morning I woke to the sound of birds, the sunlight filtering through the window I'd left cracked open. The house was still, but its energy lingered, a quiet hum that steadied my nerves. I dressed carefully, each movement a negotiation with pain, and slipped the documents into a small bag. I needed to get to Michael's office, to turn my evidence into action, to reclaim what was mine. I waited until I heard Haley and Cohn leave for their morning errands, the familiar sound of their car engine fading down the street. The house creaked, a soft encouragement, as I moved to the window again. The drop was less daunting now, the oak tree's glow a faint memory in the daylight, but its presence lingered in the earth. I climbed out slower this time, the flower bed catching me gently. The house hummed, its shadows curling around me as I made my way to the front gate. Michael's office was a 20-minute walk, a challenge in my condition, but the house's energy seemed to carry me each step lighter than it should have been. The town was quiet, the morning air crisp, the streets lined with old houses that seemed to watch me pass. I wondered if they too held secrets, if they too guarded their owners. The thought was fleeting, but it strengthened my resolve. I wasn't alone. Michael's office was a haven of polished wood and leather-bound books, a stark contrast to the chaos I'd left behind. He rose from his desk as I entered, his eyes widening at my appearance, disheveled, pale but resolute. "Peter, you look like you've been through a war. What happened?" I sank into a chair, the documents spilling onto his desk. "They locked me in my room," I said, my voice steady despite the exhaustion. "Took my phone, my wallet. Tried to convince the police I was confused from the surgery. But I got out, and I have what we need." Michael listened, his expression shifting from concern to professional outrage as I recounted the confrontation, the police visit, and my escape. I handed him the deed, my notes, and Sarah's journal pointing to her cryptic passage about the house. "There's more to this place than we know," I said. "It's on my side." He raised an eyebrow but didn't dismiss me. "Let's focus on the legal side first," he said, spreading the documents across his desk. "Their actions locking you in, taking your phone, manipulating the police constitute a clear breach of the deed's conditions. We can file a notice of gift revocation today. They'll have 30 days to vacate. How soon can we serve it?" I asked the house's pulse, echoing in my memory. "Tomorrow morning," Michael said, his fingers already typing on his laptop. "We'll use a process server to keep it official. But Peter, their claim about your mental state could complicate things. We need to counter that narrative." I nodded, thinking of Joshua. "My neighbor saw me locked in. He called you last night. He's a witness." "Good," Michael said, making a note. "We'll get his statement." And these notes, he tapped my scribbled record of Haley and Khan's words, are gold. Exact times, dates, their dismissals. It's evidence of hostility and neglect. The house's energy seemed to follow me here, the air in the office humming faintly as if approving. I leaned forward. "They claimed I was confused to the police. Can that backfire?" Michael's smile was sharp, confident. "It's elder abuse, Peter. Using your medical condition to dismiss your rights to control you, that's a serious charge. Their own words will bury them." The words were a balm soothing the ache in my chest. The house had guided me here, its shadows and groans, a map to this moment. I thought of Sarah's journal, her warning about the house knowing acting. "There's something else," I said, hesitating. "The house, it's different. It reacts. Groans, shadows moving. Sarah wrote about it, said it would act if misused." Michael leaned back, his fingers steepled. "I've heard the stories about your place. Old houses in this town. They carry weight. I don't know if it's spirits or something else, but I've seen cases where intent seems to matter. You're fighting for what's yours. That's powerful." His words sent a shiver through me, not of fear, but of certainty. The house wasn't just a structure. It was a partner, its energy tied to Sarah's, love to my resolve. "What's next?" I asked. "We draft the notice now," Michael said, pulling up a template. "It'll outline their breaches, hostility, neglect, confinement. We'll serve it tomorrow and they'll have 30 days to leave. If they fight, we go to court, but with this evidence they won't stand a chance." He spent the next hour crafting the notice, explaining each section as he typed. The legal language was armor shielding me from Haley and Khan's manipulation. "If they claim mental incompetence," he said, "we'll counter with medical records showing you're lucid, plus Joshua's testimony. Their police stunt will hurt them more than you." The house's pulse seemed to echo in the room, a faint hum that steadied my nerves. "How long until it's final?" I asked. "Assuming they don't contest, and I doubt they will once they see the notice. You'll have full possession in 60 days, but the impact will be immediate. They'll know they've lost control." I stood the documents in my bag, the house's energy coursing through me. "Thank you, Michael, for everything." He handed me copies of the notice, his expression serious. "What they did to you is unconscionable, Peter. We'll make it right." I left his office, the morning sun bright but cold. The town's old houses watching me as I walked back. The oak tree's glow lingered in my mind. Sarah's words, a constant refrain. Trust it, I did. The house was with me, and together we were unstoppable. Back at the house, I slipped in through the front door, the spare key, my silent ally. Haley and Khan weren't home yet, their absence a gift from the house. The air was thick, the shadows restless, as if anticipating the storm to come. I moved to the study, placing the documents in the filing cabinet, but kept Sarah's journal close. Its pages felt warm, alive, as if her presence lingered within them. I sat at the desk, rereading her words. "The oak's roots run deep. They hold the heart of this place." I glanced out the window at the tree, its branches still, its roots hidden but powerful. The house creaked, a soft, approving sound, and I felt it, a connection not just to Sarah, but to something older, deeper, woven into the land itself. I heard the car pull into the driveway, Haley and Con's voices drifting through the walls. The house hummed, its shadows curling tighter, as if bracing for battle. I stood, my bag in hand, and moved to my bedroom, locking the door behind me. They didn't need to know I'd escaped, not yet. The house was my ally, its secrets mine to wield. That evening I waited until they were settled in the living room, the television blaring their laughter, a mockery of the tension building within these walls. I slipped out through the window again, the oak tree's roots pulsing brighter now, a faint glow that guided my steps. I moved to Joshua's house, knocking softly on his back door. He opened it, his face etched with concern. "Peter, you're out. What's going on? I need your help," I said, my voice low. "You saw me locked in. You called Michael. I need you to write a statement to confirm what happened." He nodded, ushering me inside. "I'll do it." "What they're doing to you, it's wrong." We sat at his kitchen table, the house's energy following me even here, a faint hum in the air. Joshua wrote a detailed account. My call for help, the locked door, my surgery, the police's dismissal. "I'll sign it," he said, his pen steady. "And I'll testify if you need me." "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with gratitude. The house's pulse seemed to echo in my chest, a reminder that I wasn't alone. I returned home, climbing back through the window, the effort tearing at my stitches, but not my resolve. The house was quiet now, its shadows soft as if resting for the battle ahead. I lay on the bed, Sarah's journal open, her words a promise. It will act. Tomorrow, the notice would be served. Tomorrow, Haley and Con would learn the cost of their betrayal. The next morning, I woke to the sound of the house creaking, a low, steady rhythm that felt like a heartbeat. I dressed the documents in my bag and waited for the process server. The house was alive, its shadows curling around me, its energy a shield against the pain in my chest. I heard the doorbell, followed by Haley's confused voice, then the server's professional tone. "Haley Richardson. Con, you've been served." The house roared, a deep, triumphant sound that shook the walls. I stepped into the hallway, my bag in hand, the shadows following me like a loyal army. Haley stood in the living room, the notice trembling in her hands, her face pale. Con was beside her, his eyes wide with disbelief. "What is this?" Haley whispered, her voice breaking. "It's the end," I said, my voice calm but unyielding. "You had your chance. Now you have 30 days. The house hummed, its shadows coiling around them, their edges sharp as if ready to strike. Haley and Con stared at me, their confidence shattered, their world unraveling. The house was mine, and it was ready to fight. The house was alive, its pulse a steady rhythm that echoed my own heartbeat. I stood in the hallway, the notice of gift revocation in my hand, its weight heavier than the paper itself. The shadows curled around me, their edges sharp but protective, as if the house itself were standing guard. The air was thick, electric, charged with the anticipation of a storm about to break. Haley and Con stood in the living room, the notice trembling in Haley's hands, their faces pale, their confidence shattered. The house had roared when the process server delivered the notice, a deep, triumphant sound that shook the walls, and now it waited, its energy coiled, ready for the final act. Haley's eyes darted from the paper to me, her voice trembling. "Dad, what is this? You can't be serious." "I'm deadly serious," I said, my voice calm but unyielding, infused with the strength of the house of Sarah's legacy. "You have 30 days to leave. This house is mine, and you've lost your right to it." Con stepped forward, his fists clenched, his earlier smugness replaced by desperation. "You think you can just kick us out after everything we've done? We live here, Peter. This is our home." The house groaned, a low, menacing sound that made the floorboards vibrate. Haley flinched, clutching the notice tighter, her eyes wide with fear. "What's happening to this place?" she whispered, her gaze flickering to the ceiling where the shadows seemed to pulse, their edges coiling like tendrils. "It's not your home," I said, stepping closer, the shadows moving with me, their presence a silent endorsement. "It never was. This house was bought with your mother's life insurance, her sacrifice to keep our family together. And you've turned it into a place where I'm locked in rooms, dismissed, treated like a burden." Haley's face crumpled, tears welling in her eyes, but they weren't the tears of remorse I'd once hoped for. They were tears of panic, of a plan unraveling. "Dad, we didn't mean it like that. We were stressed. You were asking too much. Too much." The words cut deeper than the surgical wound in my chest, but the house's energy steadied me, its hum a reminder of my purpose. "I asked for a glass of water after heart surgery. I gave you this house, paid for your wedding, your debts, your life. And you locked me in my room, took my phone, lied to the police." Khan's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. "You're blowing this out of proportion. We were protecting you. You're not yourself." The house roared, a sound so deep it rattled the windows, the shadows surging around us, their edges sharp, almost tangible. Haley gasped, dropping the notice, her hands flying to her ears. Khan stumbled back, his bravado crumbling. "What the hell is going on?" he shouted, his voice cracking. I picked up the notice, holding it like a talisman. "This house knows what you've done," I said, my voice low, resonant, as if the house itself spoke through me. "It knows the promises you broke, the love you betrayed. It was Sarah's gift, her heart, and you've defiled it." Haley's tears spilled over her voice, shaking. "Dad, please, we can fix this. Don't do this to us." I stepped closer, the shadows curling tighter, the house's pulse quickening. "You did this to yourselves," I said. "You had a choice to care, to honor what this house means. Instead, you chose cruelty. You chose to lock me away, to dismiss me, to lie. And now you'll face the consequences." The room grew darker, the shadows pooling around Haley and Khan, their edges flickering like flames. The oak tree outside glowed faintly through the window, its roots pulsing in the earth, a heartbeat that matched the house's rhythm. I felt Sarah's presence, her love, her strength, woven into every beam, every root, every shadow. This wasn't just my fight, it was hers too. I took a breath, steadying myself, the pain in my chest, a distant echo compared to the fire in my soul. "There's something you need to know," I said, my voice cutting through the tension. "This house wasn't just a gift. It was bought with your mother's life insurance, $300,000, her final act of love to keep us together. Every wall, every window, every inch of this place is her. And you've spat on that." Haley's face paled, her breath catching. "Mom's life insurance," she whispered, as if the words were foreign, a truth she'd never considered. "Yes," I said, my voice steady, unwavering. "After she died, I could have kept that money, rebuilt my life alone. But I gave it to you to secure your future, to honor her wish for our family. And you repaid her by locking me in a room, by treating her sacrifice like it was nothing." Khan's eyes darted to Haley, his earlier defiance replaced by uncertainty. "We didn't know," he muttered, but his voice lacked conviction, a hollow defense against the truth. "You didn't care to know," I said, the house humming in agreement, its shadows curling closer to them, their edges sharp, accusing. "You took this house, her gift, and turned it into a cage. But the house remembers. It knows." The air grew heavier, the shadows pulsing with an energy that seemed to press against Haley and Khan, their faces etched with fear. The oak tree's glow intensified outside its roots, pulsing brighter, as if the land itself were rising to meet my words. Haley sank onto the couch, her hands trembling, the notice crumpled on the floor. "Dad, we're sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "We didn't mean to hurt you. Sorry doesn't undo what you did." I said, my voice cold but not cruel, backed by the house's silent strength. "You had every chance to show care, to show respect. Instead, you chose to control me, to lie to the police, to treat me like I was nothing. This house is done with you, and so am I." The house roared again, a sound so powerful it shook the walls, the lights flickering wildly. Haley screamed, clutching Cohn's arm, her eyes wide with terror. Con backed toward the door, his hands raised as if to ward off an unseen threat. "This place is cursed!" he shouted, his voice trembling. "What did you do, Peter?" "I didn't do anything," I said, stepping forward, the shadows moving with me, their presence, a shield, a sword. "The house did. It knows who belongs here, who honors its heart. And it's not you." The confrontation lasted only minutes, but it felt like hours, each word, a brick in the wall I was building between us. Haley's tears flowed freely now, her apologies, a desperate plea, but they were too late. Con's bravado had vanished, his eyes darting to the windows, the doors, as if expecting the house to strike. The shadows pulsed, their edges sharp, their energy a silent warning. I handed them the notice, my hand steady despite the pain in my chest. "You have 30 days, I said. "Pack your things and go. If you fight this, you'll lose. The law is on my side, and so is this house." Haley took the notice, her fingers trembling, her eyes searching mine for a trace of the father who'd once given her everything. But that father was gone, hardened by their betrayal, strengthened by the house's power. "Dad," she whispered, "please, we're family." "Family doesn't lock family in rooms," I said, my voice soft but unyielding. "Family doesn't lie to police, doesn't dismiss sacrifice. You broke that bond, Haley. Not me." Con grabbed her arm, his voice low, urgent. "Let's go, Haley. We'll figure this out somewhere else." She hesitated, her eyes lingering on me, on the house, on the shadows that seemed to watch her every move. The oak tree's glow pulsed outside, a final reminder of the legacy she'd betrayed. She nodded, tears streaming down her face, and followed Con to the door. The house creaked, a soft, approving sound as they stepped outside, the notice clutched in Haley's hand. I stood in the living room alone. Now the silence heavy but peaceful. The shadows softened, their edges blurring as if the house were exhaling its anger spent. I walked to the window, looking out at the oak tree, its roots no longer glowing but still warm, still alive. I pressed my hand against the glass, feeling the house's pulse and its strength flowing into me. The next day I met with Michael O'Connor at his office, Joshua by my side. The house's energy followed me, a faint hum that steadied my nerves. Joshua handed Michael his signed statement detailing the night I'd called for help. The locked door, the police's dismissal. "I saw it all," Joshua said, his voice firm. "They locked him in like a prisoner. It wasn't right." Michael nodded, adding the statement to the growing file. "This is more than enough," he said, his eyes meeting mine. "With the deeds clauses, your notes, and Joshua's testimony, they don't have a leg to stand on. If they fight, we'll bury them in court." "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with gratitude. "Both of you." Joshua clapped my shoulder, his smile warm. "You're a good man, Peter. You didn't deserve this." Back at the house, I walked through the rooms, the air lighter now, the shadows soft and welcoming. The house felt different, as if it had shed a weight, its energy calm but strong. I sat in the study, Sarah's journal open before me, her words, a quiet comfort. The house will know. It will act. It had acted not with violence, but with presence, with power, guiding me through the darkness to this moment of triumph. I moved to the oak tree, kneeling in the flower bed where I'd landed after my escape. The earth was warm, the roots pulsing faintly, a reminder of the house's heart, of Sarah's love. I closed my eyes, feeling her presence, her pride. "We did it," I whispered to her, to the house, to myself. Over the next week, Haley and Con packed their things, their movements quiet, subdued. The house watched its shadows, still, its groans silent, as if satisfied with the outcome. They avoided me, their eyes downcast, their earlier defiance replaced by resignation. On the final day, Haley stood in the doorway, a suitcase in hand, her face etched with regret. "Dad," she said, her voice soft, broken. "I'm sorry, I didn't understand. About Mom, about the house." I looked at her, my heart heavy but resolute. "I hope you learn from this, Haley," I said. "Family isn't about taking. It's about giving, about respect. You forgot that." She nodded, tears spilling over, and followed Khan to their car. The house creaked softly, a sound of closure as they drove away, their taillights fading into the dusk. The house was mine again, its rooms filled with light, its shadows gentle, its energy a quiet hum of peace. I walked through those spaces. Sarah and I had built her presence in every corner, every beam. The oak tree stood sentinel in the yard, its roots silent, now their work done. I sat in the living room, the family photo on the mantel gleaming in the sunlight. Sarah's smile, a reminder of the love that had carried me through. I was alone, but not lonely. The house was my companion, its power a testament to the life we'd created, the legacy we'd protected. I'd faced betrayal, fought through pain, and reclaimed what was mine. Not just the house, but my dignity, my strength. The shadows were still the house at rest, and I felt a peace I hadn't known since Sarah's death. As I closed my eyes, the house hummed softly, a lullaby of triumph. I was home, and I was whole.